Okay, so we're on with the messy bit. Now, as we said, we've kept the wing section deliberately apart. So what I've actually done now is go around and sand the big areas just with a sponge, nothing coarse, because obviously we gave it a coat of the Mr. Surface around. I've also tidied up these front ends all around here to make them nicer and blended them in if we had any joins. And the same goes obviously for the undersides, putting them in, because this bottom box section was a little bit of a handful to go together. So what we can do now is just give this a coat just to fill in all the little tiny holes and gaps and things. So we need to give this a bit of a mix because it's separated. This is Mr. Surfacer. As I said, we spoke about this before. Comes in 3 types, or 4. You get liquid putty, which is dissolved putty, and then you get these 3 guys. You get the 500, the 1000, and then the 1200. This is the 1200, the quite thin one. Okay, and basically it's halfway between being a filler, if you like, and a primer. Because what it'll do, it'll fill all the microscopic small little holes, the scratches, the imperfections in the plastic, any dips, things like that. What it won't do is fill gaps, okay? But we've already sanded and filled everywhere. What this is going to enable us to do is just to get rid of any small imperfections. There's a few other little tricks we can do, which we'll show you as well. So we've got a bit of a mix. Now this is just like paint. Okay, the first things we're going to do, I've already done it once, but we're going to put some of this around. Things where this side pod joined the fuselage. Okay, so I know we've got little scratches and imperfections all around there. Okay, now this is lacquer based, so it's not going to take long to dry at all. But as I said, if you're thinking this is going to fill out all your gaps and get rid of all your joins and things like that, think again, this one won't. The 500 might, and the dissolved putty will do that for you. This one is more of an all over thing. So all we're doing is just painting it around all the joints we've cleaned up now. Okay, so we've just got these small little areas. We've installed this rear hatch system on the back, so we're just going to paint over it and join up all the little lines just around like here. Okay, we've got a little joint just down the back here, and then on the underside. And what this will do, will go and dry up all the seams. So this is your sort of last filler job, if you like, for want of a better word. Okay, there's a couple of little tricks we can do to minimise sanding and things like that. So we've got to be careful where we hold this. The putty you can see on here already, we went roundward, that was the 500. Now as I say, you could use the 1200, things like that. And because we've pre-sanded and re-scribed across the top here, these will sink in. It's not going to fill them up, so I don't think you're going to be losing it all. Now we're just going to pop this gently around the bottom of the windscreen. Okay, so it will get rid of all the bubbles, imperfections and everything else, just like that. We're just going to pop it around this nose join that we put on for the nose. Now if you've got any filler dust in there, try and keep it in there, because this will melt that and make it all go in as one and everything else. So that's things to remember. Okay, use everything around you, including the dust. So we've got a little bit just down the bottom here. But this is how we get rid of all the imperfections and make for smooth, perfectly finished models. It's by doing this type of preparation work here, because if you haven't done it, you're going to get the scratches and the blemishes and everything else. So this is just a way of preparing the plastic for primer and getting rid of all the little things. So if you've done a heavy job of sanding and got some big scratch marks in the plastic, this stuff will fill it and get rid of it quite nicely. So there we go, that's those areas done on just like that. We'll just be a little bit careful to place it down because we don't want to get it everywhere. Okay, so that'll go down there. Now we've already done a little bit onto the system here, but we'll show you in the stage. Now normally you can come along like we've got on this one here, and we've got to do a little bit of sanding and things like that. So just move those. So by using the thinner sticks, we can get into all the little tight areas and tidy them all up. So we're using the fine side, not the coarse, and we're just going to sand it down the top until we've got the area nice and all taken care of. Obviously we're going to have to come back and rescribe. Now this one's a big area, so we can get in here with a bigger sponge okay, and sand it down. Same with the rear. Okay, this is all the top areas. All right, there. Round the back, if you don't want to destroy and obliterate detail and everything else, but it's just like a little filler job. This one here, we've got a small step, so we'll use the skinny stick to take care of those. Okay, but at the back, we filled the gaps, okay, and left a type of line in there. So we'll just do this side here. Got a bit of a step on this side, so we're just blending and sanding that in just for the moment. Okay, so we've got rid of that sponge just to blend in, as we said. Now, for areas like, so we get you nice and close for this, areas down here, we've got a joint, okay? Now, so imagine this is like on the pods on the side of the actual main fuselage as well, and we've got little filler ones here, which is nothing wrong with the filler, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so what we're going to use is this stuff. Now, this is cellulose thinners, depending where you are in the world. Some people call it lacquer thinners, some people call it cellulose thinners, and things like that. So we've got a couple of clean Q-tips, cotton buds, into the thinners and soak it thoroughly, okay? Then all we do, we come along like this and we just wipe it back and forth. Keep it wet, don't let it dry out. As soon as it dries out, it will drag, and just roll the cotton bud over the mentioned area. And there we go. Hopefully you can see. There you go. So we've done the filler without actually having to sand it. Now, complicated areas down in here is another good example. Wet it thoroughly, all right, and then just come in and flood it, and just keep twisting the Q-tip, the cotton bud, and you'll notice it all just melts away. And what it will do is run and fill in any little gaps. Re-wet it, come back in. As I say, take care of any you've got missed around off towards the outsides of the wing. Perhaps you've got a little mark, and there we go. The filler has all gone. We've got a bit down the bottom here, but it will dry as a thinner version, reset, reharden. Okay, so if we just do the same on the other side, so we'll grab a clean one into the thinners. Okay, just down in here, and again, let the thinner run in around the area you want to do, and then just give it away. And if you've got any little air bubbles and things like that, don't worry about them. They will go and take care. We've got a little bit down here. We can just give it a wipe, and you can wipe it all away. Okay, but it will help because it will go into all the little holes, because this is thinned, and take care of any nasties, things like that. Things you have to remember is this will melt the plastic as well, so you will get a super join, but you can come back and just tidy them up. Now this side, I've done it already. It's been done just around there, and it's dried hard, everything else like that, ready for primer, things like that. Or if you're not happy, go back, give it another coat of, say, Mr. Surfacer 1200, and just give it a wipe round afterwards to get rid of any imperfections that are around on the model. Okay, so we just show you one more. Now this one's dry, so clean cotton bud, flood it completely, wipe over, okay, right the way down. And as I say, it's great for getting inside little tight areas perhaps you can't normally, things like that. So we just run this very quickly. As I say, if it starts to dry, it will start to drag. Okay, so keep it nice and wet. So there we go. And as I say, it's great for filling small little holes, just like so. So make sure you don't have any runs. Careful where you put your fingers, because it will soften the plastic and everything else like that. But there we go, that's that one done. Let it dry, give it half an hour, then you can polish it up with a polishing stick and you're good to go. So the next thing we want to do is install the wing section. I've got filler all over this and everything else, so it's a bit tricky. Now, if we just move this out of the way before I knock it flying. Plenty of camera angle for this to get all this in. So what we're going to do now is install the wing section. What you want to do, you've got a little curve down at the front. We need to push that in there first. Okay, make sure that's in. Okay, and then the back section clicks in to the front and rear. Let's have a look down the front and just see how it's looking. If it's all square and everything else, and it does seem to look quite square. So that's our general how it's going to look. We've got big gaps underneath, you might be able to see up in there. Those we will take care with filler exactly the same as we did it with those the wheel bays with those sponsons on the side. Plenty of filler up there, and then we'll take care of it, but I will show you how to do that. But so just for the moment we need to glue this down. Okay, so what we're going to do, good old-fashioned extra thin with this. You could use a thicker glue if you wanted to. Plenty of it in the top, and we're going to let the capillary action do what it can before we come in with a filler. So literally we're just starting at the top here, okay, and we're going to let it flow around and do all its own work just to get a good grip, and we can square all this up to make sure it's in the right place, and we can screw it down if needed to, hold it down with some bands and that. But what we've got to do is obviously got to have to fill this back area a little bit, and obviously this stuff around the front. So we're just going to put it in there like that. So as I said, we'll lean this down, make sure it's square running across by looking down at it, measuring it, whichever way you want to do with it. But on the back here we've got a little bit of a rise on one side, so we just need to push that down. But minimal amount of glue so it dries quicker. If we flood it with too much glue, it's going to be soft and it's going to move around and everything. So I've put a little bit of glue in there. We'll let that set down there, and then all I'm going to do is mist the surfaces, fill up the holes and everything else, and I'll show you about cleaning them up afterwards. But those are going to take a little bit to dry off, so we just let those dry for a bit. Okay, so we've got it all on now, and the wing section's on and dried really well. Things you have to be careful of. Obviously we've got quite a shallow piece of plastic down here, so if you're using hot glues, you know, obviously like we use the extra thin, things like that, it does tend to melt that in, so just be careful how it goes in. And then obviously around the back here, this section down here, obviously it melts the leading edges of the plastic, things like that. So if you come in too early and try and sand it, all you're going to end up doing is making bowls of it and rubbing, and you know, it's not really sanding, it's more sort of removing. So let those areas really totally dry off. The other thing as well, we sanded and then we just went along and then polished up these door areas down the back here, and then same on the tail round there. So what we need to do now is have a good feel about these, see how they are, and if, you know, we need to make any adjustments and more filler, things like that. First thing we need to do is I've popped around a few little areas, like we've got leading edges of these wing areas. Skinny sticks are great for getting in here because they're great for getting in leading edges of wings and things like that. But we can just get them in and sand these up to see how they are. And then we've got lots of areas where we're not quite sure. They feel fine, but I'm not 100%. So what we're going to do is work our way around the model with the polishing stick. Now these are the polishing ones, you've got the white, but what we're going to do is use the actual more polished side of it, which got the green side. And what this will do is just make it a mirror type finish and really polish up all the areas. So we can run right round and see what happens to it. Now we know primer is going to take care of a lot of little scratches and things like that, but we've certainly got around some of the areas quite hefty glue marks in there, things like that. And obviously where we've sanded in quite aggressively, if you like, you know, around these engine areas, things like that, it'll just get rid of all those nice nasty scratches that can show up on your paintwork. Also, the thing it will do, in a moment we're going to put on a little bit of black primer to have a look round. It will show us if we need any more thin fillers and things like that, or even hefty filler. Okay, so we just do these top areas. I've been around all the others just to have a look. And some of them I haven't sanded off at all, so you can see the difference. Down the bottom here, I've installed the door just so we don't get overspray in there, but we can have a good look round. So what we're going to do, we'll just put this out of the way just for a second. We're going to grab, just to protect the surface, a little bit of the old kitchen towel. We find a newer roll. So we just pop these down just to protect the surface. Okay, just like so. Plane comes back. All right, what we're going to use is just black. Okay, so we've got here a bottle of Tamiya XF1 flat black. New bottle of this, so give it a good old shake, get it up from the bottom, because they do separate extremely well. Okay, and what we're going to do, we're just going to pour this neat into the colour cup. So it's unthinned. All right, a couple of mil in there like that. Pop the lid on. We're a little bit crowded. Okay, what we're going to do is just pick out all those hefty areas where we've got problems and things like that. So what we're going to do is just work our way around the front cockpit, because obviously we've done a lot of work around here, and we want to make sure the seam lines go in and we haven't got any big lumps and bumps. Okay, now by spraying this on neat, it's a thick paint, it's going to act more like a filler because it's so thick. Alright, so we can put this on. Two reasons as well. When this goes on and dries on, it will stop the filler being porous and sort of sucking up the paint, because obviously this will dry on and will go through. So we'll just show you the cockpit where we went round with the old Mr. Surfacer. As you can see, you don't get many gaps all the way around the cockpit area. So you can probably see it there. We've got a little tiny one at this rear one, but I don't think we'll see it particularly much. But you see it on the front and on the top. Okay, so we're happy with that. But obviously if you did have a gap around there, you can say, well look, we'll just let this dry off for a moment, get in with some sanding sticks, even more filler is required, and take care of those. So we just work our way around the front for a minute. So we're just going to work along the top seam and see what we got. You know, the other thing as well, have a look for panel lines, see how they're looking. It's not just for gaps. You actually look, and I can actually see quite a large gap. Well, not a gap, I should say a line running down that centre. So that's going to have a little bit more work, but that's what this is all about. Okay, so these entire engine areas, because it's made up of so many parts, we'll give a spray to. Alright, so definitely down this back where this back area joins on, because we want to see how that looks. Again, the other engine, the engine as it joins the wing. Obviously lots of work there. Around these rear doors, where we installed the tail onto the model, things like that. So we just cut to air just to dry them off all a little bit. Already I can see a few little things. This top seam we're going to have to redo, okay? And I've got a few little lumps and bumps on the engines. And I'm quite happy though the way that the wing join has made it in. Okay, so we're going to flip it over now, and we can check the other areas. So we got these big ones, these joins where we had this plate that we had all that trouble with. We want to see how that's looking. Okay. How the actual, it all joins in. We're just sort of avoiding the areas. Some of these are going to need a little bit more tidying up, some aren't. Where the engine joins the wing, where the wing joins the body. Okay. So we can get the paint in there, and that way you can have a good look of how the joins are. Just spray the bottom of these engines all in. Okay, you don't have to go wild about it. Where we have the joins, things like that. Okay, so that will suffice for there. Fingerprint. Alright, so that way we can just go round, let that dry off, and have a look where we got. Very happy about the seam line that came down there. This side's just as good, and the bottom plate as well. Maybe a little bit of rippling just down the bottom here that we might want to just sand over, blend in, rescribe some nice new sharp panel lines in there, which will hide that join as well and take your eye away from it. Which is another thing, if you've ever got filler, okay, popping a panel line in there will lose the step. If you've got a small step, by popping it in there, you will lose and you won't actually see it. So it's always a nice little tip to do. Very happy how the wing section has joined the model. You can probably see it down there, and then obviously with the engines as well, how they've gone in. We've got no gaps, no lumps, bumps and nasties, no glue marks where you've squashed it down and glue squirted out, things like that. Happy for those. Same with these pods, these sponson type things, which obviously hold the gear on. Just pop a little bit around the front one here. Okay. Now don't worry about obviously you spray black all over your model, because we're going to go back in with heavy coats of you know, primer just to have a look to see how they are. But by using black, really the two things is, one, it's easy to see with it. When you're sanding it off as well, you'll be able to see easily where you need to fix things. And secondly, it dries very, very quick. So there's no mass reason for it. You could use other colours, it's just purely for seeing how it is. My worst one, to be honest, is this top one running down here. We're going to have to redo that one completely and reset it. We've got a mixture of where it is offline. So we've got one higher, you've got the filler going down. You can see that quite clearly. So I think another coat of probably 1000 or the medium liquid filler along there, redo it, everything else. Very happy how the glass work is onto the fuselage, no problem there. I've got to pop a couple of panel lines in, you can see them where they've gone completely. I want to tidy out a few little panel lines around the back here, around this engine area. But we're using this as a basis to see how it is. The other one I want to look at is this wing join. Make sure we're all good there, where we join the centre section to the outer of the wings as well, so we can have a look at those and see how those go on as well. But looking overall, there's no huge jobs we need to take care of. These are cosmetic ones where if you're not that worried about it, you're never going to see them particularly much. It's not like we've got big gaps, joints and things like that. So I'll let those dry off. We're going to go back to step one of the sanding and filling and just pop some more liquid filler in those areas that need it, sand it back, we'll put the black back over it, and then we'll get together for when we put the primer on. So okay, that's the black areas redone, as you can see. Quite nice and glossy compared to the others. So what we're going to do now, using a clean sanding sponge, got a nice new one here. What we're going to do is literally just give the entire model just a light rub. Two things this will do. First of all, it's going to key it in. Secondly, it will get rid of any fingerprints, light fingerprints, things like that all over it, and just smooth it out. And it's just the first stage in your prep work as you go right over the model. So obviously it's going to make it a little bit rough, but it'll give the primer something to really get to grips with. So we just whip everywhere over this. Just make sure you've done leading edges of your wings, because obviously they're quite important. You can probably see there the filler sanding dust getting caught in the leading edge of the wings. Really important. The engines we don't have to worry about too much because they've had it. But certainly down this tail. Okay, right, the way over. And all we're doing is making sure it's all nice and smooth and there's no big glue marks. I've already been around this once, it's just a quick one over again. Okay. Just take care of it. Once you've been round it, obviously it's now looking quite grim and dirty as you can see it. So what I tend to do, just take cloth, bit of old kitchen roll, okay, mild airbrush cleaner. So this in here, what I've got here is a 50-50 mix with water of normal acrylic airbrush cleaner. Okay, so we just get that on, smudge it all in. Then what this will act of is like a tacky cloth as paint sprayers use, or a cheap version of plastic prep, because what it does, it gets it all to stick on here. So all we do is work right the way around the model, and it's just a quick, easy way. But this dust particles is what will cause you rough paint work and things like that. And obviously with this one, certainly we've done lots of sanding and things like that, that it will cause all types of trouble. I just missed an area down here that we just need to sand off. So we just give this a quick light sand. I've already done it once, so no, it's not going to take much. Just down the back here, in with the polisher. But it's this dust which can get into your paintwork, and as soon as it's in your paintwork, it can cause all types of trouble. You get the sort of graininess and the rough textures and everything else like that. So there we go, that's that one done now. So then what you can do, you take your acrylic, I'll get the lid off, there we go, it's a new one. This is an acrylic XF19 Tamiya. So what we're going to do is pour this into the colour cup. I'm going to do a 50-50 mix with thinners, just like that. I'm going to give this a bit of a mix up with a mixing brush. Okay, just it's got a bit of black in here, so it's going to come out a little bit darker, just because the airbrush hasn't had a full clean. Okay, and then what we're going to do then is spray this over the entire model. Okay, and this will be the primer. Now, you could use any primer you like. You know, I use this stuff just because I like the colour and I happen to have a lot of it. I always buy a few bottles of this at a time. Okay, and what this will do then is give us an even spray area to work with. So all the areas that are black will go. Any minute scratches in the surface will all go. Okay, and then obviously we can go around and start work on the actual camo work as this one's going to have. But the primer will show you what you've got underneath. Got a bit of black paint flicking through this still. Okay, but you're just building up a layer as you would anything else. Because what you see with your primer is what you're going to see with your paint. So if you've got any scratches and rough areas and anything else like that, that's what you're going to have to get rid of. So we're just going to prime the entire aircraft. It's quite a big job on something like this. And making sure the black areas are no longer black. Because obviously we're going to do pre-shading on this, and we're going to fade, and we're going to work the paint into a really distressed, old, worn look. Just make sure you do leading edges and trailing edges of wings. Really important to make sure you get those done. And what this does, as I said, is twofold. Preps the paint ready for the next one to go on, and also you can have a good look at it then and just see if you've got any scratches, glue marks, joins, anything like that.